2015 Submerged was enjoyable but limited, a combat-free, exploration and traversal-focused indie title from Uppercut Games. You played as a young girl, Miku, tasked with exploring the ruins of a submerged city by boat, clambering to the top of tall buildings that stood above the waves, on a quest to find supplies desperately needed to save her brother, Taku. To enjoy the game, you needed to go with the flow and focus on immersing yourself in the world, rather than looking for a challenge to overcome. Unfortunately, the distinctly formulaic structure meant it quickly grew stale, despite the brisk 2 to 3 hours runtime. With that said, does Submerged Hidden Depths manage to retain the immersive atmosphere, while expanding the gameplay and narrative structure. Onto some light spoilers, but the ending of Submerged hinted that Miku, having been exposed and infected by some sort of tumorous mass during her travails, has developed powers of her own, after the intervention of a mutant ocean race that has come to dominate the flooded Earth. In Submerged Hidden Depths, Miku and a healed Taku find themselves arriving in the ruins of yet another city, overgrown with dark, pulsating plant life, inhabited by plant-like facsimiles of the former wildlife, and survivors caught in their final moments. A brief opening sequence quickly sets the scene and lays out the basic gameplay loop. These mutated plants have had their seeds removed, by who and why is not initially clear, but they need to be returned to their pods to restore equilibrium to the environment. Now, the answer to my earlier question is both yes and no. Submerged Hidden Depths retains the unexpectedly serene post-apocalyptic atmosphere, and there's more to do. However, the narrative follows a near-identical structure to the prior game. There are 10 seeds to find, in place of the supply drops you were hunting for in the first game, all of them scattered throughout the submerged city, usually in high places, and it's your job to traverse the waves in your fishing boat, enter these ruined structures, engage in some very light platforming and puzzling to reach the seed, and then haul it back to its pod. Aside from some optional collectibles that document the fall of the city, there are no location-specific events or cutscenes, so you can head out in any direction and still experience the same narrative flow. Recovering the seed and restoring the environment triggers another cutscene that progresses the story. Miku keeps experiencing flare-ups of her infection and has recurrent dreams of an approaching aquatic threat. Meanwhile, Taku is desperately trying to connect with his increasingly distressed and distant sister, concerned that her attempts to restore the city will come at too great a cost for them, and tear apart what remains of their family. Sure, it's an inoffensive design given Submerged Hidden Depths also has brisk pacing and doesn't last too long, but the formulaic structure feels artificial and immersion-breaking. It creates the sensation that the overarching narrative is actually detached from the location you're exploring. Gameplay in Submerged Hidden Depths remains streamlined and is never challenging, beyond maybe spotting side paths that could lead to collectibles. There is, of course, a degree of player agency in how much of the world you want to explore, and how much value you place in collectibles. Traversal and climbing is simply a matter of pushing the thumbstick in the right direction, while any major interaction, think using levers, pulleys, or picking up seeds and collectibles, is a single button press. You can scan the environment with your telescope to mark locations, bring up your map for navigation, and you'll find no shortage of reading material in the menus. Unfortunately, this limited gameplay complexity grows stale over time, and the optional activities ultimately feel like busy work, even if a few might provide great views. Story locations give you the impression you're solving some traversal-type puzzles that require the correct sequence of events, but you'll soon realize it's impossible to complete them in the wrong order. While Miku is primarily responsible for restoring the seeds, several smaller structures, usually with some sort of collectible, give you the chance to play as Taku, but again, his moveset is identical. As a result, it's hard to remain engaged once you realize you're just going through the same simple motions, over and over again, just in architecturally or aesthetically different locations. Of course, Submerged Hidden Depths can be a lengthier experience if you want to explore the map in its entirety, and complete a checklist of optional tasks. Abundant space between the more elaborate story locations provides the opportunity to find boat upgrades that let you get to places faster, something that's actually useful, dredging up relics from the old world that leave Miku and Taku perplexed, or just climbing lookout towers or finding landmarks. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with the design, but generic icon-clearing open worlds have long since become the bane of gaming. When they're saddled with limited gameplay complexity, the overall experience just feels even more mundane. Now, what always impressed me, despite a few battles with the camera in enclosed spaces, was the presentation. The submerged city, with its rolling waves, lush architecture, colourful flora, abundant animal life, and beautiful sunsets, is always a joy to traverse, with a rapid day-night cycle providing no shortage of beautiful vistas. My only gripe, with the PC version at any rate, and this could be hardware specific, was a few seconds of stuttering whenever I entered a new area or upon triggering a cutscene, something you'll see in the review video. The visual impact is helped no end by the immersive ambience and an excellent soundtrack from composer Jeff Van Dyke, to the point where you could argue the musical score dominates the experience. Storytelling is limited to brief exchanges of pidgin English or narrated storyboards, so the music, combined with some expressive animations, is essential for injecting emotion into each scene. The music is also dynamic, swelling in intensity as you get closer to a trapped seed or the pod you need to return it to. It all makes for a great audio experience, if nothing else. Now, if you're desperate for a chilled experience, a game that allows you to zone out and still progress risk-free, or maybe a low-stress experience for a new gamer learning the ropes, Submerged in Depths is a good pick. However, I've always believed that simple or no-risk gameplay needs to be paired with a strong narrative component to stand out. By sticking to a rigid and overtly artificial progression system, Submerged in Depths' narrative fails to make as big an impact as it could. What you're left with is a legitimately beautiful and atmospheric environment that's worth exploring for a few hours, but it's one that leaves no lasting impression.